Hello, I'm Ragioma and this is Witness. The war in Bosnia tore once peaceful communities apart. Serbs and Muslims killed each other with a viciousness that shocked a so-called civilized Europe, which hadn't seen such carnage since World War II. In an attempt to stop the bloodletting, the United Nations declared the town of Srebrenica in Eastern Bosnia a safe haven. A Dutch peacekeeping force was stationed there to protect the mainly Muslim inhabitants and keep the ethnically divided populations apart. It didn't work out that way. In July 1995, Bosnian Serb troops were set to overrun the town. The Muslim men who had been defending Srebrenica tried to escape, but they were rounded up and massacred. 8,000 were killed. The International Court of Justice recently admitted it was genocide. Amir Kulaglic and Ramisa Atic are two who survived the fall of Srebrenica. Neither feel they can return to live in Srebrenica, but they return for the memorial service to honor the dead and bury the victims that keep being discovered in mass graves throughout the region. Filmmaker Fiona Lloyd-Davis followed them as they went back to Srebrenica, a town that had once promised to be a safe haven.
Believe me, all those fields up there are soaked with blood. Srebrenica is saturated with death, full of places where people died.
Amir Kulaglic is bringing his family back to his birthplace, Srebrenica.
Ovo je moj grad. Ovo su moje ulice. Još malo pa ćete vidjeti mjesto gdje je babo radio prije rata, znaš. Srebrenica je lijepa bila, sine, znaš.
Before the war, Amir Kulaglic was a Muslim living alongside his Orthodox Serb and Catholic Croat neighbours. Srebrenica was a predominantly Muslim town. Today, 3/4 of the inhabitants are Serbs, and they make sure everyone knows who is in control here. Amir, his wife Yasmina and 2 children don't live here anymore. Even though it's 12 years since the war ended, they would rather live as refugees in Tuzla than return home because they don't feel safe here. Today they've returned because Amir wants to attend the annual commemoration service and to bury the dead.
Sutra ću ići na dženazu I bit ću.
Tomorrow I'll go to the funeral and I'm going to be very sad. I will have to say goodbye to around 500 of my friends, neighbors and comrades.
Oko 500 mojih prijatelja, komšija I saboraca.
In the hills near Srebrenica, Ramisa Atic has also come back to visit her home. She now lives in Sarajevo, but has returned to bury her son and husband at tomorrow's memorial. She has waited for this homecoming for the last 12 years.
They used to come up this path. The bus used to come down there. Today, 6 or 7 times a day. When they came from school in the evenings, I turned the light on so they could come from down there.
But her son and husband never did come up this path.
I always expected and lived in hope that they will appear from somewhere. But now I've heard the worst, that we are going to bury them now.
20-year-old Sevledin and her husband Ibrahim were killed like thousands of the men who tried to escape Srebrenica through the Serb lines. On July 11, 1995, a column of 15,000 men and boys set off through the woods to try and get to free territory in Tuzla, but less than half survived what became known as the March of Death. Every year, thousands of people come to retrace their steps. Amir is with them, He was there in 1995.
The situation was really so horrible that sometimes your mind stops. A shell would land and people would be cut down, maimed, arms on one side, legs on the other, head. But you couldn't leave the people who were lightly wounded. We had to carry them.
He has found a comrade who was with him on the original March of Death. Many of the men did not make it alive. Amir's friend recalls the last words of a comrade who went to help another.
To je ono što je valjda krasilo Srebreničane cijelim putem, da su ljudi pomagali jedni drugim. Ja zato kažem, meni su stvarno na dva mjesta spasili život.
It took Amir 6 days and 7 nights to reach safe territory in Tuzla. The worst moment of his journey came on the 3rd day, when, with many civilians and fighters, he reached a main road. He knew the Serbs were waiting for them.
I was here at this place on 13th of July around 9 o'clock in the morning. 5,000 people came with me. A large number of them were very tired and exhausted. The majority of them started to think of surrendering or negotiating with the enemy to let us pass through. I and my group couldn't agree to that because I knew they wouldn't let us go through. Around 11 o'clock, 4 buses came, 4 trucks and 5 to 6 smaller cars with Serbian soldiers, who stopped here and then climbed to that hill there and started disarming and taking these people to this playing field.
This is the field Amir ran through to escape the Serb death squads. He finds an old man who has returned to live here, and together they relive those terrible events.
Ošli tamo I morali smo otići malo dole desno da bi prešli Jadar, jer Jadar bio gor dubok.
Da, a ovdje ima gaz. Ovdje je plitko.
Tako, tu smo prešli, tu smo gor prešli. A ovi ljudi koji su ostali iza mene, oni su njih doveli ovdje I ovdje je njih bilo oko 4-5 hiljada. I oni su ovdje pobijeni. I oni sad dolaze na ideju da se na mjestima gdje su grobnice stavlja materijal. Ako se neko sazna da je tu bila grobnica, onda su vadili I prenosili na neka druga mjesta. Zato je ovdje samo nađeno tako malo tijela.
Nosili u kolicima preko mosta sa špediterima, vukli vamo I ukopali. Kaže da otud ima put ovo što ideš na moje kuće. Kaže po tom putu koliko je kosti bilo, to je neizvarno. Koliko je to ljudi tu istrhlo tijelo. To su ti ranjenici koji su ostali, to je sve pobijeno tu.
Ranjenici.
To je.
Amića.
Ja. Eto, želim svako dobro.
Zdravi živ bio.
Hvala ti.
Čuvaj se.
Što si mi pomogao?
This is where the wounded and murdered men and boys of Srebrenica have ended up, in mass graves throughout Republika Srpska. But this is not where they were killed. To try and disguise their crimes, the Serbs dug up the bodies and moved them to secondary sites. The lost are now being excavated by the state, and new graves are being found almost every week. More than 8,000 people are missing, but so far less than half have been found. A few miles down the road is the industrial suburb Potocari. It was the headquarters for the UN in July 1995. That summer, thousands of people came here, thinking they would be protected by the Dutch battalion. But they weren't. Serbs separated the women from the men who were taken away and executed. The women were allowed to survive and taken to Tuzla. Today they have come back to see the return of their men. Ramisa is one of the women who survived. She's here to find her son and her husband. They are among the 465 who will be buried tomorrow. Each year more bodies are found, so each year there are more coffins and more goodbyes. Ramisa will never forget the last time she saw her son.
I hugged with him and cried. He said, "Don't cry, Mum, don't cry. We will meet in Tuzla soon." Never again. I expected all the time that someone would come and say somebody is still alive, that they will come. That's what I thought. Well, I never thought that they are no more.
But she knows that she is not the only one whose hopes have been shattered.
I see I'm not alone. There are people worse off than me. They don't have anyone, but still they live. And they're hoping for something. But I don't know what they are hoping for.
For the Muslims who used to live in Srebrenica, hope is in short supply. Each year, more and more bodies are being discovered in mass graves. After the break, we'll see if this shattered community can ever be rebuilt. Join me then.